Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of our podcast, Is Breakfast Included? How you guys doing? Good? Great. My guest on the show this week is a good buddy of mine named Marko Hajdinovic. Now, Marko owns a company based out of Toronto called Hammersmith Basses, and that's how we met back in 2016. We've been friends ever since. I was in Toronto. He came by. He agreed to sit down and talk to me. Talked a little bit about everything, about the basses, about his career in LED lighting. I think that's the term. We talked about some movies. In this interview, I forget the name of an actor. That actor is Michael Beck. So when you get to that, Michael Beck. Anyway, it was a lot of fun catching up with him, and I hope you dig it. Let's check it out.
How's that?
Yeah.
Good level?
Yeah, it's a good level, I think. Cool. All right, man. Introduce yourself.
Well, Bernie, hello, listeners. My name's Marko. I'm the way Bernie and I know each other is through my work with Hammersmith Music. I founded a line of basses a number of years ago, and the Durand connection opened things up. And I also do custom LED lighting. I've been doing PPE for a while, which has been an adventure, and now just hoping to smooth things out, get rid of the extra stuff, and just get back into building basses and have that be my main gig.
Right on. Where are you from?
Born here in Toronto. Grew up about an hour west of here in an area called Kitchener-Waterloo, and came back up here to go to college, and I've been in the area ever since, except for a year in the Caymans. That was kind of cool.
Just a year?
Just a year.
Yeah.
When you get down there, you're on a work permit, and you're stuck with whoever you're working for is who you can't look for other work or anything like that. So that's how long I was able to make it last with a bad employer before I had to cut ties and come back.
You came back to Toronto?
First, I went back to Kitchener-Waterloo for a little bit. I had some work that was set up for me there, but I made my way back to Toronto. Yeah.
We'll get into the basses here. When you do LED lighting, and you've had a pretty cool career doing that. You've gone all over the world. Yeah. I know sometimes, like, you'll text me and go, "Hey, I heard you're in, Dubai. Go to this building." I did all the all the lighting in that building. Yeah. How'd you get into that?
Well, I was a sign guy in my younger years. I took graphic design in school. That took me into doing some lighting and sign work. I was a rep for a lighting company, and I was doing some graphics and setting up displays and store fixtures and that sort of thing. And so once I had enough contacts doing that, I branched off and I started making signs full time. Signs were my background, and LEDs were used in signage a lot earlier than in other places because of the things that they could do, being small, going up in parts of buildings that you couldn't get neon to or other light bulbs. So the sign industry was pretty eager to use.
It didn't get hot.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. They could change colors. Yeah. And that was one of the cool things too, is once blue LEDs were invented in the 90s, you could do full spectrum, and that's how all these jumbotrons and all these LED screens that are the backdrops to all the concerts and tours and everything, it's possible because blue LEDs came to be. If you didn't have red, green, and blue, you couldn't do that. Yeah. It used to be you had like red, amber, green. So all your lights on your stereos or your cars, they were always red or green, right?
Yeah.
That's all. So in the 90s, the blue was invented, and it opened up things pretty
Is that because it can mix and make different? Okay.
Yeah. You need red, green, and blue to make white or any other of the full spectrum of colors.
I just remember the Ziploc, yellow and blue make green, the Ziploc bag commercial. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And so I was an early adopter in a lot of ways of some different lighting technologies. We did some pretty cool things with backlighting sign systems. I wasn't one of the very first, but I was among the earlier people using the color changing lighting. So we did some pretty cool airports and casinos and hotels and stuff. And it's funny, just like when you mentioned Dubai a second ago, I was a partner in a company for a number of years. And I was flipping through on the TV, and we have a local multicultural channel here. Mm-hmm. And he was on there. He had a program.
Your partner?
My old partner, who's Indian. So he's on there speaking Hindi, I think, and going through the speed. They were showing the Burj Khalifa Tower.
Yeah.
Which is, the tallest, and they've lit up the whole thing. The whole thing becomes this huge color changing thing. And the cool thing about that building is we lit up a mosque on the 160th floor of that building. So the very, very, very top, there's a tiny little mosque. It's like 30 or 40 feet around.
Yeah.
And my lights are in there. I can't promote that we did it. I have no photos. I got some secret cell phone snaps that were sent to me because I'm not allowed in there. It's a very holy thing.
Yeah.
Only for the royal family and the connected in Dubai. But the way that my partner used to sell what we did there is our lights are closest to God. Which is kind of cool in a way. But we did a lot of stuff around the mall there, a bunch of buildings. And
so he would say that was his pitch because of this mosque.
Yeah. I mean, we've done stuff in other places. Yeah. I make lights. Where they end up going, it's out of my control a lot of the time. But it's cool that you get to go later to a venue or a hotel or an airport somewhere around the world, and you know that your stuff is in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
in a way, does that kind of like you go to an airport or a casino or somewhere that you've done live, does it kind of make you feel like, oh, I'm kind of home?
Not home. It's just, it's cool to be connected to places like that through things you've done. It's not the same as making friends everywhere you go and having somebody you can call when you're in those places. But if you have a place that you can go and see the work you've done, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to doing things that looked good or could be appreciated afterwards. Right.
Yeah.
My mother was a tailor. My dad was a machine fitter, fabricator. So I've got this sort of maker gene.
Yeah.
And that led me into, the signs and the lighting and eventually into the guitars, which was, a hobby to start. And then it became a really time-consuming hobby, and I decided to make it into a thing.
Yeah. So you came from a graphic design background. Did you teach yourself the soldering and all that?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, soldering is just, it's a little bit of effort, trial and error, right? When you're doing...
I'll tell you this, I'm the worst solderer I know. And watching you one day do this, it was like...
I was doing a guitar.
Yeah, and it was just so effortless.
Yeah, there's a touch. Once you know your equipment, it's like anything. Like when you know your iron, you know the temperature, you know how long you have to make contact to make things flow, then you're good. You're smooth. It's like anything. You become a pro after you do it for a while, right? Most of the lighting was done in an automated way. We had what would we call it, a pick and place line. There's machinery that picks all the parts and puts them onto the circuit board, and then it goes through an oven and it comes out in panels. You break up the panels, and then you've got your individual lighting components.
Okay.
So we were tooling up custom, aluminum fixtures to do airport, cove lighting runs that were thousands of feet long. Or one of the coolest things we did was in Honolulu. You guys did a show there, I think, too, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So the Hilton Hawaiian Village is a rainbow tower. There's a big rainbow on both ends of the building. And decades ago, somebody did a mural in tile, and they lit it up from the ground just with these bad spotlights. And then over the years, the fireworks and the sunlight and the saltwater exposure kind of degraded it. And they came up with a budget to redo the whole tile mural. So they scanned every 8-inch square tile, high res, recreated a tile that was ceramically printed in high resolution. And then they thought, well, we're not going to spend all this money redoing this mural. We're going to light this thing up properly this time. So they went through a whole bunch of lighting companies like Philips and Osram and GE, and they didn't have the exact thing to do what was needed. So we were recommended by an agent or a rep of, I think it was Philips. And we're a Philips licensee to do the color changing stuff. And so I flew out there, and one day I left in the morning, had a meeting, demoed the sample product that I had shipped ahead of me. Pretty productive meeting. Went down to the bar, had a Mai Tai to prove, took a picture of myself on the beach with a drink, and then I flew home. Same day, Hawaii and back, 11 hours each way. But we got the contract.
Right on, man.
So I went back to Hawaii 3 more times after that. Total of less than a week, but still... Yeah, it's like going on tour, right? You're lucky to be in a city for a day.
I haven't been back to Hawaii since we toured through there. Yeah. It's definitely, I think, something everyone should do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cities like that. that I tell people, you got to go once, right? You've seen them in a lot of movies or whatever. So you got your New York, your Vegas, your LA, your Chicago, your Miami. There's some must-do kind of American cities, and Honolulu, because it's out there, doesn't get listed as often. But I think Hawaii is definitely worth a
visit.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I live in New Jersey now, and when I do use the subway system, growing up, all I knew of the subway system was that movie, The Warriors. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I was actually telling somebody that the other day, like, that's all I knew. Now I'm kind of learning, understanding how it works, but I still think of the Warriors whenever I'm in the subway.
You got to take the late train out to Coney Island.
I know. And I hear the music playing in my head.
Yeah.
The Baseball Furies theme.
Yeah, or Joe Walsh, right?
Yeah.
He was the soundtrack.
In the city.
The exit soundtrack in the city, yeah. Did you see they were going to redo it in LA?
It was Tony Scott was going to do it. Ridley Scott's brother was going to redo it. Well, before he died, he was talking about doing it in a modern day kind of like Bloods and Crips type thing with other gangs. And
I saw a what do you call those for the movie? The preview, the trailer.
Yeah.
So it was like a trailer, like a preview trailer, and it wasn't Bloods and Crips like. It was very like, how the gangs in New York back, the Gramercy.
Yeah, the Gramercy, the Gramercy Crips.
And then, the Furies, the baseball team, they were all kind of corny, kind of campy. Yeah. And that's what made that movie great.
Yeah.
But it feels like they tried to do something kind of similar because there was an all-girls baseball team in the
Really? I never saw that. The only thing I know about it was Tony Scott I think that's his name, Tony Scott, was talking about redoing it. And then he unfortunately died.
I wanted to ultimately see it. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those movies, like I said, it's one of my favorites from growing up. Like I have that Warriors. Like that's, it's just classic, right? So I was eager to actually see it. Once I saw that preview, I thought, okay, it's okay. It's not like what I thought they might do with it. It keeps some of that kind of cheesiness. Maybe this will work. I'm curious to see it.
I hope they remake it.
Have you ever seen Animal Kingdom? It's a recent show. It was set down in, I think, Oceanside, closer to San Diego.
No.
It's kind of like a crime family.
No.
So it had that like West Coast surf town kind of vibe to it, as opposed to like inner city or other parts of LA that have more of that rep. It felt more coastal, like it was going to be, Malibu against Venice against, Manhattan Beach or that kind of thing. Yeah. It looked like it was going to be real West Coast like.
Really?
I was eager to see it. Never happened.
Yeah, I know there's those traditionalists that hate, like, oh, that doesn't need to be remade. Yeah. I don't think it needs to be remade, maybe reimagined. As a young man, I'm 50 now, but I was in a band. I was always about the presentation of my band, but I'd always, before my band came on stage, I'd make them play the Baseball Furies theme song. Okay. As a young 20-year-old Bernie thought it was going to be really cool and dramatic.
Yeah, it's the other big thing that kind of lives on from that movie is can you dig? Cyrus at the Conclave in the park, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think it was one of the LA championships, Shaq afterwards, they're in the middle of the floor, the crowd comes out, the microphones come out, and they put a microphone in front of Shaq, and he's quiet for a second, and he's like, can you dig it? And I thought, cool. This is so cool right now.
It's that movie is there's so many references that are made in pop culture. There's when Dave Chappelle had that Chappelle show, his skit, he did this this take on In the Studio. Remember that show on MTV, In the Studio, where they're trying to make the super band or something, but he keeps shutting down the studio like they did, and he's like, now I'm not going to open it up till I get some fresh Cambodian breast milk, and then it comes back to him, and he's drinking this milk out of these bottles, and he starts clanking it.
Yeah.
And he's like, breast milk, you made my day. And, if you've never seen The Warriors, you wouldn't get that reference.
No, you're right. There is a lot of references in there. Mercedes Rule.
Yeah.
And I think his name's Joe Remar.
Mm-hmm.
They had a scene in the park where she was an undercover cop and arrested him.
Yeah.
But they went on to like careers.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a thing recently. There was a reunion of all the gang.
Yeah.
The Warriors, and the saying about how he's calm and collected on the surface, but he's like a swan. That's why his name's Swan. He's moving furiously underneath where you can't see, right? I always thought that was a really cool sort of saying. Is like somebody might look cool, but under the surface, the wheels are turning, the feet are moving, and that's kind of me. I have a more of a quiet or a low key outward demeanor, but the wheels are turning always. Keeps me from sleeping.
Remar went on to be, I think, in Dexter. He was
a father.
Yeah, Dexter, and it's funny because Olivia Newton-John just died. But the reason I wanted to see Xanadu is because the guy that played Swan was in Xanadu.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I can't remember his name. I'm gone blank.
Yeah. I know, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was in Xanadu.
Okay.
So there's that connection. Anyway.
Cool. Yeah.
I don't know how we got on to
yeah, well, you just talk, right?
Yeah.
But definitely one of my favorite movies. I like the old Godzilla movies, too. I'm not bad that way.
Man, the new ones are actually pretty good.
Yeah,
but they're not the old ones.
They don't have the cheese factor.
Yeah,
right?
Dude. Yeah.
Or like Battle of the Gargantuas, where there's the same kind of.
You can't find that movie anywhere. You can't find that movie anywhere.
I think actually I did a deep dive on Amazon Prime, and they were showing like a lot of these like old 60s, 70s, 80s shows. I watched Star Trek first episode, and I went back and I watched like Married with Children and Hardcastle and McCormick, and like all these shows from when we were kids.
Yeah.
And you see how like bad the production is, and the stunts and the cuts from scene to scene. It's like, how did we not see
the editing was so terrible?
Terrible. But as kids, you're just like, it's cool. Like the truck just flipped over and exploded.
Yeah.
But as adults now looking back at it, it's like, man, how did I ever buy that?
Yeah.
But it was fun.
My kid, well, he's not a kid anymore. He'll go see one of the new Marvel movies and he'll say, the CGI was shit. And I'm like, I had to deal with Lou Ferrigno being painted.
Yeah.
That's
a real man with green paint on him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, I was a big A-Team guy, right? And so, all the crashes and the stuff that they would do, and having to give BA something to pass out so he could fly. Like nowadays, it's just like the show like that would be so different.
No, they couldn't do half the shit they did.
No. And Married with Children, the other one that I went back, I was like, I was even cringing a little bit at some of the stuff early on, that like the in terms of misogyny and it was
shit they got away with back then.
Yeah.
You and I met through your bases.
Yeah.
How's that for a segue?
Well, no, it's whatever.
They kind of go hand in hand.
It was so random. So I started the brand, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you have to put yourself on a path to meet known artists, right? And so one day I'm on Facebook, and one of my good friends posts, "Aren't I a lucky girl? My boyfriend's taking me to see Duran Duran next week." I'm like, Duran Duran? Wait, what? Where? She's like, yeah, Niagara. They're doing 2 shows. Well, go buy tickets. I'm like, buy tickets? I think I'm going to try to do better than that, right? So I send an email through the website, and it's Caddy who gets it.
Uh-huh.
It's Caddy or Katie?
Caddy.
And like within like a couple of hours, you send these emails off, you're not sure you're ever going to hear from anybody, right? That's just how it works. But I sent, a polite introduction, said who we were, what we did, and she responded. She goes, "I can't make any promises, but I've forwarded your email to the tour manager, and good luck. I hope you hear from them."
Yeah.
So like 2 hours later, I get an email from John Taylor. I'm thinking, this can't be this easy,
It's usually not.
It's usually not. But when you're dealing with courteous people, and there's an element of timing too, right? Like if you're really happy with what you got going on, you're not really entertaining new brands, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you're, you've gone through a career and you've gone through one brand or two brands, or maybe I think at that time you guys were not.
We were playing PV.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I don't know that you were like, I don't know the whole story, but I think there was an opening.
Yeah.
There was like a consideration. It's like, oh, well, if this guy's willing to come show us his stuff, let's have him by. Who knows, right? So, like I said, some people are just locked in and they're not going to consider it. Other people are just, and even if nothing ever happens, it's still a friendly connection that's made, right? So for that reason alone, it was worth going. But, you came out first and you did the, sensing out if we were legit.
What's the word we used? Gatekeeper?
Gatekeeper, yeah. And that's fair. You can't just have people wandering in trying to, get into shows or whatever, trying to pawn their stuff off. And it was just, it was a interesting hang that night, and it was crazy. I'm driving home from Niagara back to Toronto, and I get an email, and I pull over because it's from John Taylor.
Yeah.
It's like, sending me a thank you letter for driving all the way to Niagara to meet and to show him my instruments. And thank you so much for making that effort. I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't normal. And so my respect level for John, like at that point, through the roof. Obviously I had been a fan since I was a kid and everything, but at that point, we kind of had an agreement. I was going to build something for him. I ended up coming out to see you guys in Montreal. Got to hang out with Jerry Barnes from Chic a little bit before the show, and then he's like, let's talk.
Yeah.
Right. I got to see them when they came through later with Chic was touring with Earth, Wind and Fire, and it's just one door opens another, and it's really cool that you get lucky the first time with somebody very thoughtful and courteous. And like the crazy thing is John was like rhyming off shows that they did here in every show.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we played at the El Macombo. Oh, we shot a video at Maple Leaf Gardens. And I was like, how can you possibly remember all this stuff? But he's engaged. He's like, it's very cool.
Yeah, I never speak for him. I always just try and, if I would have got the wrong vibe from you, it would have never happened. But I didn't get a vibe that you were pushing anything. You just wanted to show him something, and we set it up, and invited you out, and he dug it. He dug it enough to accept the bass from you.
Yeah.
Because we get offers all the time, man. Like we get stuff like, hey, will you play this? And it's not something that we don't get shit for free just to get it. Like if we want something, we'll pay for it, but in all of that, you and I got to be really good friends. And I think ultimately that was the most important thing that came out of this, whether John plays your bass or not. Like you and I started spending time together and hanging out, and you invited me out to do things, and I fucking came and stayed with you here in Toronto. And
we did NAMM. You hung out with us at NAMM, and when you were in Toronto, we went and you introduced me to another guy you worked with before, Jesse Keeler, with Death from Above, which was very cool. And he was the impetus to me designing one of the models that we ended up doing. Yeah. The model, ultimately, the release of that model didn't go smoothly for us, and it kind of put things on hold for a while. My mistakes were made, but it's cool that a player, and it's not like Jesse was demanding or anything. He just got his way that he, with the short scale and the frets all the way up. And he's like, if you can do this, I'll try it. Yeah. And that challenge accepted, right? Yeah. So it took me a while. I actually had difficulty designing something that I liked enough that fit the things that he wanted. Yeah. And then I was, on one of my YouTube deep dives, and there's a band in Finland called The Mutants. Mm-hmm. And they do this really cool kind of, it's almost like a cross between 70s porn music and soundtrack music and surf music and funk. It's just this, no vocals, just really soundtrack sounding kind of stuff. And the bass player had this old Guild B301. And I'm looking at that thing, I'm like, man, I like the way that sounds. I like the way it looks. They hadn't made them since, I think the late 70s or something. And so I kind of started with that, and I started pulling features around, and it really got rebuilt from the ground up. Like I wasn't just copying it. It's completely different structurally and
it was an inspiration for
it was a visual inspiration for how I might tackle the body part, which is where I was having difficulty with a model for Jessie. And it came together really quick once it started to, and anybody I showed it to was kind of gaga over the idea. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be our new model. And
I remember NAMM when you debuted it. Like people just kept coming by, and then we'd be walking around, and they would say, "Oh, because my tag said Hammersmith." They're like, "Where's that booth? We heard about this bass."
Yeah, I put, and again, a lot of what happened with that bass was a little premature based on the amount of feedback and interest I was getting. Yeah. Right. So the design came together, and I put it online. And the first weekend on our Facebook page, I had like 60,000, and this was early. We had only like 5,000 or 6,000 followers at that point. I think we don't have much more than that now. But I just, from the number of followers compared to the number of interactions you got in terms of likes and shares and questions, I ended up counting. I had a chart. I was trying to keep track of how many countries people reached us from. It's 22 countries.
Wow.
People were like, "Who's your dealer? Where can I get them? How much?"
Yeah.
It was that Futurama meme, shut up and take my money. Yeah. I was like, okay, I got to do this. And so I went a little too quickly, right? And before the product itself was production ready, I took some orders, took some deposits, and timelines, got shot. The OEM that I used to do our necks and bodies had issues with the redesigns that we had to do for the structural stability of the neck. And it just, it got late. And then, all it takes is one or two people online to say, this guy can't be trusted, or this guy's not delivering his instruments, and it snowballs. And I'd never been through anything like that before. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't, but ultimately I just decided I can't keep making promises. I'm just going to stop. Yeah. I'm going to put things on hold. And, I was actually ready late 19. I had come back from China. I went and did a trade show in China in October of 19, just before COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Got all the details sorted out. I was
You're
ready.
The one then, huh?
Was that?
You're the one that brought it over here.
No, but what's crazy is I was going to go to NAMM in 20, and I was sick.
I talked to you because I was there, and I called you, and you're like, I planned on going, but I can't make it.
I can't imagine now in hindsight if I was, and I can't claim it was COVID.
Yeah.
But it was like a flu I had never had.
Yeah.
It was like,
I was just joking, by the way, you bringing it up.
Well, I would have.
Yeah.
Like if it was like some early strain, because my shop is right by the airport in Toronto, and a couple of the restaurants right there where I regularly hang out, there's regularly people that come from the airport. They're staying in the cluster of hotels right around there. So it would have been a perfect vector point for me to actually have been one of the first people to get it. But it was like 8 or 9 days. Like I couldn't sleep unless I was upright because I was like drowning in my own fluids. Like it was that bad, but the body aches. Like it was like no flu. So I suspect it was an early variant of COVID that I got. But then I was ready. I had money set aside at that point. I was ready to order a batch of inventory for Hammersmith. Yeah. And so the difference is I don't make these onesie twosie. I work with an OEM that does the necks and the bodies special for us, to our design, to our spec. Because they're not a certain
number of them.
Yeah, so there's a sizable number that they want, and then what happens is depending on how many other people they're building for, like let's say they're doing stuff for Epiphone or Squire or pick your brand that goes over and gets. OEMs,
and those guys are getting thousands made.
Right, and so you're trying to climb your way up the pecking order a bit. Sometimes you increase your order, trying to work your way up, but then as the order quantity increased, it actually wasn't helping me because I was promising more people I was going to have more stock that wasn't on the way. So ultimately, the decision was to put Hammersmith on hold. Even in January of 20, when I was ready to order, the OEM told me, they're like, look, we're going on a Chinese New Year holiday. but we don't think we're coming back after. So you might not want to order right now. We don't know when we're going to deliver.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? And they, I had the COVID memo a little early. They sent me masks, which was kind of cool because I think there was a directive by the Chinese government to try to make them look better.
Yeah.
I had 4 or 5 because I've been buying some LED components and some aluminum components, and like, you can't do a lot of work in the LED world unless you have some connections in China. It's just the way the whole world has gone with that industry. So I had a number of companies all offer me 200 free masks, all of them. Like 4 or 5 different people sent me 200 masks free. I was like, something's going on here. There's a reason they're sending 200. So they're probably getting credits from the local government or something for having done it. But in any case, that opened the door to a company that was new in the mask space because the government went in, changed their facility, put mask lines in. So I had access to this new mask production capacity that didn't exist a month prior. So, you were on TV. We're at the beginning of this pandemic. Nobody knows what's going to go on, how bad it is, or how transmissible it is. All we know is if we stay away from each other.
Yeah, right.
That's the only thing we knew, right?
Yeah.
And so immediately I thought, well, masks would be helpful. And so I instead of putting that batch of money that I set aside, that little treasure chest for Hammersmith, I thought, well, tours are going to get put on hold. Venues are going to close. Working musicians aren't going to be working. So I didn't think it was a good time to invest into the guitar thing, thinking 6 months down the road, these working musicians are going to be selling instruments as opposed to buying them. Right? Just because the way that the work was going to change. So that part I was correct on. But, well, not the selling instruments, but the fact that tours were shut down, venues were shut down, and like the industry was squelched in a lot of ways. So putting Hammersmith on hold was smart there, but then not smart in that all this stimulus money that started going out, right? And the special unemployment programs and things like that. And there were people that were spending on instruments.
Yeah.
A lot.
I think Fender had its biggest year.
Yeah. Like you couldn't get any of the online retailers had no stock.
Yeah.
Because all these people suddenly that are 30, 40, 50 years old, 60, however old, they're home from work. They're like, oh, well, this is a great time to learn how to play guitar. Or I'm going to buy a drum kit, or I'm going to get my first keyboard, or pick an instrument, right? So all the beginner and intermediate level stuff everywhere gets cleared out. And Hammersmith basses aren't beginner and intermediate, but they're a next step up. Like they started around that $1,000 mark. But I still could have sold anything I made. And so that whole diversion into PPE that I did, that wasted the entirety of 20 and into 21, because we brought over machines. We were doing the 3-ply masks right here in Toronto. But all of that ended up not being financially smart to have done because we didn't have the connections to get the major government contracts.
Yeah.
So not only was I doing the wrong work, I was losing that 2 years of good Hammersmith sales and building that brand into something bigger, right? So, I'm at the point where I'm ready to get back into it. And, it's a timing thing. The brand, when the instruments are out, I have confidence that people will buy them. I think my designs are good. I've never had people, like we've had people buy multiple Hammersmiths because they like them. Very few have sold on the resale market. Like people keep them. They buy them and they keep them. I think out of the 170 or 180 or so instruments that we built over the first few years, like less than 10 of them were flipped on the used market that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And I check in, once a month I'll go on Reverb and I'll search the name, or I'll go on the Guitar Center used store section. I'll search that and like any of the used classified forums and stuff. I check and they never come up for sale. People like them. They hang on to them. So that's encouraging. And, we'll get back at it, and it'll be an ongoing thing again.
No, man. Year. Yeah. I hope so, man. You made good bases. I always said, and I think I even told you this. I wasn't aware of everything going on else in your life. Yeah. But I always said, like, if it was just 100% on the bases, like
that's just it. When it started, I was pretty busy in the lighting
Yeah.
world and making good enough money there that I didn't need Hammersmith
Yeah.
to support me.
Yeah.
So the money that we kind of started making, I would spend it on going to NAMM instead, which
Yeah.
is not a small thing.
No.
There's a lot of builders, a lot of small brands can't afford to go, but I'd spend the 10 or 12 or whatever $1,000 to go because that would have been money that I would otherwise need to operate.
Yeah.
That I didn't need because Hammersmith was working in my space that was already paid for with the lighting industry.
Yeah.
And my personal income from the lighting was good enough. I didn't need to make money. So I thought, I'm just going to use this time to just grow the brand. I'll plow money back into it. I'll fly somebody in from, when somebody's out of town or traveling through, I'll put them up in a hotel. They'll come hang out at the shop. I'll fly them to their gig the next day kind of thing. I was doing that kind of thing, which is not something a small new brand would normally do, which helped in some ways and it hurt in others because it maybe made us look like we were bigger or more legit than we were.
Yeah.
But it was a side gig at that point, right?
Yeah.
And so it's...
I remember being surprised the first time I came out to NAMM with you, and then we did this little road trip together, and I was surprised, like, you weren't a big company. You weren't even a medium company. You were a very small company, and I thought,
There's a lot of small companies.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, the music industry's got its big, it's got its Fenders and Gibsons, and then after that, in the bass world, you've got your Lakelands and your G&Ls and things like that. But there's room for smaller builders.
And I meant that in a complimentary way because of the way you presented it.
Yes.
You presented it in a way like, I'm going to try and compete. Not try. I'm going to compete with these manufacturers. I'm going to build a bass that I'm going to talk to the player, what they want. That's what I'm going to give them. I'm not going to give them a bass that they have to send to their tech to completely modify.
Yeah. Earlier on, I did a lot of sort of online. I would check out the forums and I'd ask questions and you can go back and read polls that somebody from another brand posted 3 years prior, like, oh, how do you want your markings on a fretless bass? So you can read people's responses. It's kind of a sneaky way to do your market research, right? But I did a little bit of that too in terms of, if you were buying, like, if you're a Rickenbacker player, for example, because a lot of Ricky players, that instrument looks cool as fuck. Like, it just really does. But some guys try to play it and they can't get around it comfortably. But there's still such an appeal. So I was trying to figure out, okay, the guys that play it, is it the look? Is it the tone? Or is there something about the playability? Because Rickenbackers have a 33 and a quarter inch scale as opposed to 34 inch, which is a normal scale of a Fender or whatever. So I wanted to know if that scale was something specific to those guys that they liked. Because when we were coming out with this K design, I was going to do it as a short scale for Jesse and then on a regular scale. But I thought, okay, well, it's got a vibe that's not Fender-like. It's not totally Rickenbacker-like, but people kept comparing it to it. Because it had these like chrome pickups and this is just kind of, the look is a little automotive, a little ornamental like that, retro-y. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should do these in 33 and a quarter scale instead. And so I did that research online and that's how we made that decision. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, I tried to do something that was ergonomic, that didn't have to follow the rules of what other brands had to do based on their tradition. Yeah. Because it's an interesting business like that. Like, you could be brand new, but you have to look like you've been at it for 40 years. Yeah. Unless you're coming out with this new modern looking thing, right? Yeah. And that's tricky to gain acceptance. In the bass world, if you don't show up at a studio with a Fender looking bass, you're going to raise eyebrows, right? Yeah. So the Fender look was something I was aware of when we were doing things. And I didn't necessarily want to make P's or J's, but that's what a lot of people were asking for. So we did a couple of runs of precision and jazz-inspired instruments. Ours are different. We do things a little differently. They're downsized and made a little more comfortable. But when we're back at it, we're not going to be doing P's and J's. It's going to be just all Hammersmith. So we'll do the K bass that you saw that spun off from the Jesse Keeler idea. And then what we called our C model, which in my mind, it's crossover. It's kind of a crossover between a P bass and a J bass. Mm-hmm. It's got an offset to it, but not like a jazz. And it's just super comfortable. And C also for comfort base. Because for a guy like me, I'm 5'7" with arms to match.
Yeah.
So I'm not playing the same instrument that JT is playing, for example. He needed that extra 35-inch scale, which for me is already really, really pushing it. But for a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", how tall is he?
He's up there.
Yeah.
He's up there.
Tall guy with long arms. So, instruments aren't a one-size-fits-all thing. And so you just hope that you put your stuff out there and people like it enough that they don't have to go keep looking to somebody else. And so knowing that most of what we made got kept is pretty encouraging.
Yeah. We still have ours.
Yeah, man. I'm glad about that.
Well, man, I appreciate you sitting down and doing this. It's great to see you.
Yeah.
By the way,
it's been too long.
It's been way too long. I know we've kept in touch, but I'm actually here in Canada.
Yeah.
We have a show here tomorrow, and it's good to see you.
Yeah. Tomorrow night, amphitheater.
What's the amphitheater called? What's it called? The
Budweiser stage. Actually, it used to be the Molson Amphitheater, but now it's a Budweiser stage. Yeah. But this, when are you releasing this?
This will come out next week.
Oh, yeah, so this will be in hindsight. Yeah.
We had a great show last week.
Yeah, in
Toronto.
So it's Chic opening up again, right?
Yeah, Chic will be there.
Awesome. Yeah.
Chic is doing the tour with us, so we love watching that show.
Is Russell Peters going to be out?
Man, I don't know.
Because he's local. And he's around a lot, and he's friends with, is it Nile Rodgers who
he's friends with Niall, yeah.
Yeah.
Because his brother loves Duran, Clayton.
Right.
And I plan on emailing them when we're in LA, because I know Clayton.
Can I tell the Calgary story?
Yeah, totally.
Right. So a bunch of years ago, you guys were playing Calgary, I think it was August 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
My sister's birthday is August 3rd. It was either the 2nd or the 4th you were playing. So I
remember the planets aligned.
Right. And you set us up with passes, and we showed up, and my sister and her husband and myself, and I just wanted her to have a fun night at the show for her birthday, and she's a huge Bowie fan, and I knew you guys had at that time you were doing that tribute,
the little Bowie tribute,
tribute, but then also when Chic is out there, they do Let's Dance.
Yeah.
Which I know is one of our favorites, right? So we were in the seating area for a little bit. I was like, we're going to want to go stand over there with Bernie soon.
Because you knew.
Well, I knew that they were going to play She wanted to go to the bathroom. I'm like, no, you got to wait. There's a good song, because I knew the set.
Yeah.
I knew the set list. So Let's Dance comes, they start doing Let's Dance, and she's like loving it. And then somehow towards the end of the set, I know they do that extended version of Good Times, where they do
where they had people come up on stage.
Yeah, but they also do the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah,
Rapper's Delight. So it's like a 10-minute version with like this bass solo and the whole bit, right? But I know that they get people up to dance. And so as they're doing that, we're standing there. I'm like, it's her birthday. Can she go too? And they're like, yeah, just follow the group up on stage. So my sister's birthday, she's up dancing on stage in front of the whole arena. And she looks over, and like two people over is Russell Peters. And she's a huge fan. So after the set, we're hanging out in your world there, stage right. And she's doing Russell Peters bits back to him, which he's so patient and understanding, because that's got to happen constantly. People do it. It's okay, or what were the other, take it and go, all the bits, right? And
somebody gonna get hurt real bad.
Yeah. So obviously we're from Toronto. We know us, but we got to hang out with him that night, and that was super cool that he was really funny with her and engaged and just chill and everything.
And he's such a nice guy.
Yeah. And so he asked me, where are you from? I said, well, I'm from Toronto. I said, but my shop's in Mississauga. He goes, oh, I'm from Mississauga. I'm like, dude, you're from Brampton. Because he's famously from Brampton, right? He goes, no, man. Once you have money, you move to Mississauga. Which he didn't live in Mississauga either. He was living in Malibu at the time, right? But he's got a house here, so he's around a lot. And the funny thing is, I've run into him like 3 or 4 times since, and it's always at like some bass event. Yeah. The following year, we were at NAMM, and there's like this private function that goes on at this bar.
We ran into him there.
Right. So he shows up with the bass player, not man, what's his name now? Public Enemy. The guy with the clock.
Flavor Flav.
Flavor Flav. Yeah. He's the bass player from Public Enemy, but he's not in the band anymore. Yeah. So Russell Peters shows up at the bass event with the bass player from Public Enemy. He does the introduction, whatever, and he's like talking about, it's funny, all my friends are bass players. He's like Tony Cannell from No Doubt, and like Gene Simmons, we're friends. I'm like, dude, that's comedy gold waiting to happen.
Yeah.
I'll set you up with a bass. You go to Gene Simmons for lessons. Right? There's got to be a bit that comes out of that experience, right? Because you're right, let's do it. And, we've exchanged emails once in a while. We just never really connected in a way that I could get him an instrument. But we'll make that happen.
Yeah, he's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Russell
Peters, big-time jiu-jitsu guy.
Didn't know
he's
that.
A badass, man. Yeah. He produced this series on Netflix called Hip Hop Evolution.
Yes.
And it's so good.
I saw that.
So good.
Yeah.
He's done it all. He's a DJ. When he was younger, he did mixtapes, and he's a big boxing fan. He's a I kept in touch with his brother after that. We talk occasionally. Yeah. They're both such good people that you realize why Russell is so successful, because he's a human. He's not fucking rock star, there's very few comedians on the same level as him. And,
Yeah, he didn't, at his peak.
Yeah.
There wasn't a comedian bigger.
Yeah.
Like he was.
But now there's Chappelle, Rock, Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias. Those guys are, but he was one of the first on that level.
That major tour.
Yeah.
Global
arenas all over the world. Yeah. I love the guy, man.
Yeah.
But that was a great night.
Yeah. And then I flew back that same night. So I have a habit of flying out to places to make something happen and then flying home.
Yeah.
And I flew to Montreal to deliver an instrument.
Yeah.
I flew to Croatia to deliver on an instrument.
Croatia, I remember that.
But I spent 3 weeks in Europe, which was cool. So I did the Croatia first. I was stuck there for a little bit. I actually tweaked my back on the train. And then I was supposed to go to the Netherlands to see our friend Remco.
Yep.
But his plans changed with his fiance. There was something going on and I couldn't go. So I went to Prague instead. And when I was in Prague, I was asking you, do you know anybody who's doing anything in Europe or whatever?
My friend Mike.
Your friend Mike.
Yeah,
he was in Germany with Breaking
Benjamin.
Breaking Benjamin, that's right. Yeah. So I ended up, instead of going to Eindhoven, I ended up going to Hamburg, Germany, and catching a show with Breaking Benjamin.
Metal Mike. Yeah, they're out right now with Alice in Chains. So.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my boy right there.
And the other guy that I met on tour with you, Moose, who was Niles' tag.
Yeah, he's with Mudvayne right now.
Mudvayne, and he just got off tour. He was with
Weezer,
which was fun to follow. I was seeing his updates and stuff.
Yeah, they did that big tour, one of the first big 2021 tours with Green Day.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm looking forward to just getting my ass back in gear and rebuilding these kind of cool connections. And
man.
The friend network around the world and just being. I'd like to reach a point where we're known enough when people come through Toronto, is that they want to come check out the shop.
Yeah.
And if they can't come check out the shop, I can come to them with an instrument.
Yeah.
So Toronto's really good for that.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily married to staying in Toronto forever, but this is where
you are now.
This is where I am now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I don't know if there's anything more you want to know.
No, we did it, man.
Right,
I appreciate you sitting down.
First time.
Question.
Okay.
My podcast is called "Is Breakfast Included?"
Yes.
And if it was included, what would you have?
What would I have?
Yeah.
Huevos rancheros.
Huevos rancheros.
I had there's a local place called the Good Fork, I think it's called.
And
I got taken for breakfast for my birthday 2 years ago, and this was like during COVID, so there's like masks and the whole day. But I had so they did these obviously the huevos and stuff, but I ordered this steak cut bacon on the side. It's like super thick, 2 slices, and it came out, and it was a heavenly breakfast.
Yeah,
it was a very good. Birthday, thank you.
Right on, man. Anyway, man, again, I appreciate you. It's good seeing you, and I'll see you tomorrow, man.
I'm very glad that we've been able to keep in touch.
Yeah, like I said, I think out of all of this, my guy playing your bass as the introduction, what I took away with it is this friendship.
Yes.
Because we've been friends since 2016 now.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
we've
the
done
connections.
we've had a lot of cool adventures together, you and I.
It's the connections to people that make all of this
Yeah.
the best. Any of the best trips I've ever taken, you know, you get to see cool places and do cool things and see the airports, but it's the people you meet
Yeah.
that make it, right? Or the people that you get to hang out with when you're working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's huge to me.
Right on.
So yeah.
Likewise. Well, let's hope the next time we run into each other, it'll be sooner than later.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Let's end this.
Cut me off now before I babble anymore.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thank you.
Bye. Right on. Marko Hajdinovic. He doesn't really do social media, but once Hammersmith basis kicks back up, I will let you know. In the meantime, you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.